Question number 1 for today. Aircraft is homing to a station of 090 with 10 degrees starboard drift. What will RBI show? RBI is nothing but your relative bearing indicator. Relative bearing indicator. What will this RBI show? Now, these drift questions are very easy. You have to remember two facts. With a starboard drift, with a starboard drift, heading of aircraft is less than the track. With a port drift, heading of aircraft is more than track. Is more than track. So let's draw this. You are homing to a station. That means you are going towards a station or approaching a station. So that means if this is your NDB station and you will homing towards NDB on the track of 090. Okay. So towards the station on a track of 090. So we know the track. So track is 090. Now what will be a heading? We have not been given the heading of aircraft, but we have been given drift. What is drift? Drift is starboard drift of 10 degree. Starboard drift of 10 degree. So with starboard drift, heading is less than track. Track is 090 degree. So heading will be less than track by what amount? By an amount of 10 degree, which is your drift. So heading will be 080 degree. Heading will be 080 degree. So let's draw aircraft. So aircraft heading is 080 degree. So instead of pointing straight towards the NDB, your aircraft is pointing a little bit to the left hand side at a heading of 080. This is your north datum. This is your north datum. Now what is your relative bearing? Relative bearing is the angular difference between your heading and your QDM, that is track towards the station, measured clockwise from aircraft heading. Measured clockwise from aircraft heading. So this is your heading and this is your track towards the station, which is QDM 090. So from heading clockwise. So now we have to find this particular angle. Okay, now this particular angle is how much? Heading is 080. QDM is 090 towards the station. So the difference between them, 090 minus 080, the angular difference between them is 10 degree. Is 10 degree. So relative bearing is 010 degrees. That means in words, if I have to express this, I will say NDB station is located, station is located 10 degree the right of aircraft heading or longitudinal axis of aircraft. 10 degree to the right of aircraft heading or longitudinal axis. Simple. Remember, starboard drift is heading less than track, port drift is heading more than track. Let's go to question 2. Aircraft is homing. Again, it is going towards a station on 360 track, 15 port drift. What is RBI? So with a port drift, heading will be more than track. Heading will be more than track. Now what is track? It's 360. What is drift? 15 degree. So heading will be more than track. So 360 plus 15, which is 015 degree. 360 is nothing but 000 degree. So that addition to 15 is 0.15 degree. Now what is relative bearing? Relative bearing formula is magnetic bearing to the station minus magnetic heading. So what is magnetic bearing to the station? It is 360. What is magnetic heading? 0.15. So relative bearing will be 345 degree. Relative bearing will be 345 degree. Diagrammatically, this is your NDB station. Okay, QDM is 360. QDM is 360. QDR, track away from NDB, will be 180. So now we know we are approaching the station. That means we are somewhere here. Okay, on this side of the NDB station, since we are approaching it. Heading is 015. Heading is 015. So that means somewhere to the right of 360 heading. Heading is 015. This is your north datum. And now we have to find relative bearing, which is the angular difference between heading and QDM, that is track towards the station. The track towards the station is QDM. So let's measure this angle clockwise. Will be somewhat like this. Now this entire thing, entire full circle up to this point, red dot, would have been 360. But we have not made a full 360-degree rotation. We have stopped at this point where our QDM is. So our relative bearing will be less than 360 by what value? By this small value. By this small value. Which will be how much? 360. QDM is 360 and this is 015. 360 nothing but 000. The angle between 000 QDM and 015 heading is 15 degree. So the entire 360 minus 015. So relative bearing will be 345 degree. Relative bearing will be 345 degrees. Next. Aircraft is flying away from station at 270. So away. Okay. So QDR is given 270. Track away from the station is 270. If QDR is 270, QDM is reciprocal of QDR toward track towards the station. So it will be 090 with 15-degree port drift. So with a port drift, very simple, heading is more than the track. Now currently you what is ADF it's saying? So currently your track is you're flying away from the station. So if you're flying away from the station, your track will be QDR, which is 270. Which is 270. So heading will be more than 270. By what amount? By this amount, 15-degree port drift. Therefore, heading will be equal to 270 plus 15, which is 285 degree. So heading will be 285 degree. Okay. Now let's find relative bearing. Relative bearing is magnetic bearing to the station or QDM minus magnetic heading. Now since we have QDR, we can derive QDM from that. So QDM is 090, magnetic heading is 285. Answer will be in minus. So 90 minus 285 is minus 195 plus 360 is 165. So relative bearing is 165 degrees. Okay, that is your answer. Diagrammatically, this is your NDB station. You are tracking away from the NDB on 270, track 270. Heading of aircraft is 285. Heading of aircraft is 285, which is more than 270, which is more than 270. What is relative bearing? Relative bearing is the angle between your aircraft heading, right, and QDM, which is track towards the station. In this case, it will be QDM will be 090. So relative bearing starts from heading of aircraft clockwise. This relative bearing will be equal to the total. This total semicircle would have been, this total would have been 180, but we are not making this big complete 180. We are just making a small part of that. So this small part relative bearing will be 180 the whole minus this small amount, which is the difference between 285 and 270. 015. 015. So 180 minus 015, it will be equal to 165 degrees. 165 degrees. Okay. So diagrammatically it is represented like this. Question 4. Aircraft is flying from a station on heading 030. Relative bearing is given to you. Now relative bearing is given. You have to find track and drift. So you are flying from a station. From means outbound. From means outbound. Nothing but your QDR, right? So you're tracking away from the station on a heading of 030 and RBI 185. Now the formula states that magnetic bearing to the station or QDM is nothing but an addition of relative bearing and magnetic heading. So relative bearing is 185, magnetic heading is 030. The sum total will be 215 degree. So magnetic bearing to the station is 215. If magnetic bearing to the station is 215, magnetic bearing from the station will be reciprocal of that, QDR, which will be 215 minus 180, which is 5035. 035 degree. 035 degree. So what is your track and drift? So now according to the question, you are tracking away from the station. You are tracking away from the station. So you are tracking away from the station on 035 degrees. Tracking away from the station on 035 degrees. Heading is QDR 035. 035 degrees. Drift. What is drift? So drift is the angle between your heading and track. Okay. So heading is 030 and track is 035. So I'll just erase this. Heading is 030. So 030 is little bit to the left of 035. So, so 030 is this and this is 035. So now what is the relative bearing? So relative bearing is the angle. Relative bearing is given to you. You were told to find track away from the station. We first found towards the station track. From that we found away from the station is 035. So that is fine. Now what is the angle between, to find drift, you should know the angle between your heading and track. Now track away from the station is 035. You are tracking away from the station 035. But due to some crosswind conditions from the left, due to some crosswind conditions from the left hand side, you have to apply crosswind correction technique. That is pointing the nose or heading or longitudinal axis of aircraft to the left hand side, the direction of the place from where the wind is blowing. Okay. So drift will be how much? Difference between heading and track. If heading is 030 and track is 035, the difference between them is 5 degree. Okay. So drift is 5 degree. Now whether this drift is starboard or port. Now heading. If heading is less than track, you have a starboard drift. If heading is more than track, you have port drift. You have port drift. So in this case, heading is 030 and track away from the station is 035. So heading is less than track, that means you are getting starboard drift. So that is the final answer. So first use the formula to get QDM. From that you will get track away from the station. Read the question carefully. Okay. And then drift is the angle between your heading and your track. So diagrammatically I have shown you how to do that. Next question, aircraft is flying away from a station, again away, on 200 track with 10 degrees starboard drift. What will be the heading and what will be the relative bearing indicator? So if you are tracking away, that means you are talking about QDR. If QDR is 200, QDM will be the reciprocal 020. QDM will be reciprocal 020. So let's draw NDB. So QDR 200. Okay, you are tracking away from that with a 10 degrees starboard drift. So starboard drift means heading less than track. So now your track away from the station is 200. Now heading will be less than 200 by what amount? By drift amount. What is drift? It is 10 degree. It is 10 degree. Therefore heading will be 190. Heading will be 190. So let's draw this diagram. Your heading of aircraft is 190, which is less than 200. So it will be pointing somewhere to the left hand side of 200. To the left hand side of 200. So heading is 190. QDR is 200. QDM. What will be the QDM? It will be opposite of 200, which will be 020. 020. Now what is relative bearing? It is the angular difference between your aircraft heading and your QDM, that is towards the station. Measure clockwise. So start measuring clockwise. So from the heading, now this is 180, correct? When the NDB station is directly behind this QDR 200, that angle will be 180. And this extra angle is 10 degree. So total relative bearing will be 10 degree plus this 180 degree. 10 degree plus 180 degree. Relative bearing will be 10 degree plus 180 degree, which is 190 degree. Fine. Why this 180? If I have to show you again diagrammatically, let's say we had zero wind conditions, nil wind conditions, no winds. Okay, calm atmosphere. In that case, the aircraft will track away from the NDB correctly on this track, correctly on this track, meaning the heading of aircraft will also be 200 away, and the track, as you know, is already 200. So both heading and track will align, and in that case relative bearing will be 180, meaning you're tracking away from the ND.